Here we go. So it's 11 o'clock on a Wednesday. Thank you so much, everybody, for joining today for this monthly webinar we have, ESG related. This time we're going to talk a bit about building your products and, of course, with quality in mind. So I'm going to dive into it. For this one, I will again be sort of setting the stage for the topic that we are talking about today, and trying to sort of zoom in on where we are and what we're going to talk about today. Once I've done that, I will present the two participants today, which will be joining me in a Q&A. I'll be asking some questions, and we'll have a dialogue about the topics that we're going to zoom in on today. And of course, as always, you are very welcome to ask any questions in the Q&A. I'll keep an eye on it, and during either my presentation or when we have the Q&A with the participants, I'll make sure to ask the questions that you have for both of them or for myself. So just let me know. The session will be recorded, and for anyone either not attending or, of course, wanting to watch it again, you will be sent the recording afterwards so that you can revisit it, and of course with the slides and everything. So everything will be shared afterwards, and you'll get them via email afterwards. All right, so let's just get going. And so, of course, the reason that we are all here today sort of zooming in, and in general just with a very big interest on this topic, is of course that we have the EU joining together and creating all of these legislations and requirements that we're all met with and trying to navigate a lot in. And that's always the hassle for many of our customers and many of the brands out there, to try to sort of navigate in that whole agenda that's coming our way. Back a couple of years ago, they then came up with this strategy, the Sustainable and Circular Textiles by 2030, which was a strategy set by the European Commission to set goals for where do we want to be in 2030, and what are the specific things that we then want to focus on when we talk about the textile industry, and here, of course, the fashion industry and footwear and etc. But everything that has to do with textiles is actually included in this. So they sort of zoomed in on this, and from that, a lot of legislations has come into place, and some of them are already there, and some of them are coming up. So that's sort of what we're preparing for. And this is really much a picture of what we also see with all of the customers that we have, and the one that we speak to daily, is that we have the brand in the middle, and we of course see this very much legislations and abbreviations that people are trying to navigate in. What do they mean? What do they mean for our daily life? What does it mean? Is it directly something that impacts me, or is it something that is impacts me via a trickle down effect from larger companies asking me for all of this? But it also sort of gave an opening to new words that we weren't used to in the fashion industry and in the textile industry. Words that we suddenly needed to know about and try to navigate in to see how do we actually prepare for that. So this is sort of the picture to say that that's where brands are. They are sort of met with all of these and trying to navigate in this whole new agenda. Now at Delogue, we're really much focused on, well, what do you then need to focus on? What is your primary focus once all of these legislations and requirements are coming your way? And the three main topics that we keep on going back to and that we keep on focusing on is these three topics. We talk about circularity, we talk about how are we actually developing our products. Are we developing, and that's very much why we're here today, in terms of quality and longevity? Are we developing them with recycled materials? Are we developing them to think about how will they be recycled? So it's very much about how are we actually developing our products? How are we doing that throughout the process? And which key factors are we thinking about throughout that process? The second one is, of course, transparency, in terms of both in terms of how do you communicate towards your end consumer. Of course, it's transparency throughout the value chain. So it's also backwards in terms of your supply chain, transparency and traceability in terms of, do we know who our suppliers are and how are we working with them? And we'll definitely dive into that one as well, together with the two participants today. And the third one, which is the one I think that many are also a bit scared about, and also are thinking, well, how do we actually, how do we work with this and how do we focus on this, is the environmental. And that taps very much into, one thing is to measure the environmental impact and so on, but one thing is also to think about how are we developing our products in terms of the quality that we are creating. How is that impacting? Do we think about that our products can last for a long time and thereby have a less environmental impact because the consumer has the product for a longer time? So all of these these three strategies are really something that we focus on when we speak about that towards our customers, when they ask us, what do we start to focus on? Where do we start to focus on? Now, looking at that and then looking at why it's so important to start off with, well, how are we developing our products? It's actually very important to look at the qualities for the first time, or for the first thing, because the quality of your product is something that you actually can do within your company, and together with somebody that we will speak to a little later, in terms of how do we ensure that the quality is upheld both in our own way of working, but of course also with our suppliers, with our manufacturers. How do we ensure that process, and how do we keep track of that? So that's very important throughout the supply chain, and of course towards the end consumer in terms of the quality that we're producing. Now, understanding that role of quality is, of course, to first of all have a look at how are we developing our products. And the key thing also from the Delogue perspective is that the way that we develop our products is, of course, to create these bill of materials. The bill of materials are sort of the recipe for how our products are supposed to be produced. And that's in many cases done in collaboration with our suppliers to ensure that they also sign off on those things being a part of the whole product, and ensuring that that is then within quality done in the right way. So that's very much done in a collaboration, both internally in the company, but also together with the suppliers and the manufacturers, to ensure that in a whole, that product has the right build-up, has the right recipe to make the right quality and the right product for the end consumer. And in the product development phase, the life cycle, the product development life cycle, you definitely then have these checkpoints where quality really becomes a part of ensuring that when you get to the end product, that's the quality that you want to uphold. You have the checkpoints in terms of the sample process. Are we developing in the right sense? Are we getting the right quality for the samples, and are we looking at the right things in that development process to ensure the high quality? And then, of course, when we get to the end stage where we've placed the order, we want to ensure that the quality in the production is the right, is the one that we want. So throughout the process, throughout the development process, and towards the PO and after the purchase order, that's where the quality checkpoints really comes in, to ensure that you have the high quality that you want when you develop your products and produce them. Now, of course, diving into and zooming into why we're then here today is, of course, that as a PLM system, we are, of course, a tech solution collaborating with other tech solutions to ensure that both the development but also the quality goes hand in hand. And that's something that we very much focus on, that's a big part of what we do in our platform in terms of the development, but we don't have the quality insurance in our platform. So that's where we rely on other tech solutions to carry on that process for us and to help the customers in that process, so that those two goes hand in hand. and that dives into the two companies. Of course, we are Delogue, and we are where you have the development, you have the product development, you have the sample flow, you have everything in terms of how do I actually get this product to life. And we ensure that you can follow your measurements, follow your sample flow, follow everything in there, so that you can have that collaboration with your suppliers in your development phase. Now, going over to Qarma, where Jacob would also dive into that one in a short while, that's where sort of they take over the entire process afterwards. So they really ensure the QC flow. They really take over here and ensure that together, of course, again with the suppliers, that's where quality really gets into play in the production facilities. And that the right things are controlled, and that the right things are controlled out there in the production facilities. And I'll let Jacob also dive into that right now, because introducing who I have with me today is, of course, Jacob, who is the co-founder of Qarma, a really an amazing platform that we have a great collaboration with, and also Morten, who is from SIKA Footwear, who I'm very happy to introduce because he uses both of the solutions and really has hands-on experience with both of them to let us know what that actually means in a daily life when you use these two platforms. So welcome both of you to today's webinar. Thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you very much, Anja.
Also, I'll just stop sharing my screen now so you can see the three of us. So if we could just start off by just you briefly introducing yourself. You could start, Jacob, by introducing yourself and maybe say a bit more specific words about Qarma that I could.
You're happy to. First, thanks a lot for inviting us for this session here. So really short, my name is Jacob. I'm the CEO and also the co-founder of Qarma. We are a company headquartered in Denmark, but we operate very globally. So our customer base is really spread across the world. We have you can say our backbone in Denmark, where we develop all our tech, but a lot of our tasks are really living and breathing in the factories. So we have a team in China, we have a team in Vietnam, and we also have a team in US, and we just recently opened our first office in Australia. Our customer base is global, and we tend to say our user base is even more global. Every day, about 30 to 40,000 people touch our Qarma app. So we live and breathe in the factories. We work with apparel brands. We work with a lot of functional workwear brands, and we also cover other categories such as home, accessories, and lifestyle products. So we are quite broad in our range of products. We tend to work well with companies that have a remote sourcing setup, where they're not necessarily sitting next to the production plant, but it's really when it lives in different cultures, different countries, different setups, etc. So if supply chains are complicated, and then we tend to fit in well in that setup. Just like as you mentioned, Anja, we like to sit on top of other systems, so we don't consider ourselves as the center of the universe. We work more on top of other platforms such as Delogue. So we typically sit on, I call it, like, if they have 3 letters like ERP, PLM, PIM, WMS, then we tend to tap into that and try to enrich that data and activate it in the factories. And as you said, we are really much in the activation process. So when products are developed and ready to go into full scale in a production setup, then Qarma is really where we start to capture things, help companies have that level of visibility in the factories from a quality standpoint as well. So that's pretty much about Qarma.
Thank you so much, Jacob. And Morten, if you could tell a bit about yourself, and of course, who is SIKA? And we'll dive into the work with the two platforms afterwards. But just briefly about yourself and SIKA.
Yeah, thank you for inviting me to be participating in this webinar. My name is Morten. I'm responsible for the quality here at SIKA Footwear. SIKA Footwear is a family-owned company in the 4th generation. over 150 years experience of making footwear. We are making safety and occupational footwear, so meaning only for the professional users in different kind of industries. We are using both the Delogue platform, and we have also with the Qarma to handle our quality amongst our different suppliers around in the world. So we are, like Jacob briefed up on, saying that we are using a lot of data from various sources like the WMS, ERP, Delogue system, and whatever.
Yeah, perfect, great. All right, so maybe let's just start off by just zooming into Qarma a bit in terms of walk us through some of the really big challenges that you face out there when you start off with the company. They want to control their quality. What do you see as challenges when they sort of say, well, we wanna have a look at our quality, and maybe they've done it in a more non-tech way before? What are the challenge out there?
I think overall, first, I think having Morten here is great because general, like if you're working with functional workwear, you have a different element of quality.
True. Yeah.
It's not just a dress that needs to fit well to a party but it's really something that needs to, you have a whole different use case than what we see with the apparel and fashion brands. So really, when we are touching on quality and talking about, the lifetime of a product, I think what Morten and SIKA are doing is really what I think there's a lot of learnings for other brands to understand, and best practice to understand in this space, definitely.
Yeah.
But I think I know we, I provide, or Qarma provide a quality tool, a solution to do this. We tend to say we are more like the enabler here. That's kind of how we approach it. So for us, when we come in, or when Qarma lives in factories and starting to collect things, whether it's quality findings or any defects findings, etc. I think what really drives quality is the way we manage that level of communication between factories. Yeah. That's the first part. So QC stands for quality control. Within Qarma, we have a rule that we always talk about as quality communication, because being able to align tolerances, being able to communicate better with the suppliers on what are the major, minor, critical defects that we are defining is crucial in driving good quality. So communication is definitely one thing, and that's typically what we see as a challenge. And then, of course, the other part, which is very important, is accountability. Who is responsible for the quality? Is it the factory or is it the brand? And, if it's something in between, it can be really difficult sometimes to drive good quality. So we often, when we work with brands and retailers and trying to empower suppliers to support on this, the key thing here is really, helping them place that level of accountability with their suppliers as such. And then, as I mentioned before, it's often a remote production setup a lot of our customers live in. So trying to master the less is more is a key thing here. And I think it's not only applies to quality, I think it applies to a lot of the other topics that we also are heavily involved in, whether it's supply chain mapping or supplier compliance or even product compliance. Is, how can we zoom in on what really matters rather than trying to do everything? Those are really the key things and challenges we see in the factory. Is like, how can we master the communication? How can we master the accountability? And how can we make sure that less is really more? So that's it's not much about Qarma. It's really, we are just the enabler that try to drive those things in a way.
But I think you're tapping into one of the things that's been a challenge in the textile industry for so many years, that but when it is so scattered, which is the name of the game in the textile industry, it's also about bringing those together as close as possible. So I think that really taps into, of course, also Delogue and so many other systems in terms of trying to sort of bring it together. Can you relate to that one, Morten, as well? Also maybe looking at how it was before.
Before we entered up with Qarma, it was very non-synchronized tools and handwritten notes, making pictures and using a lot of time to making the reportings. And actually, the data was floating around at different places. It was not very structured. So to make some kind of analysis on that, use it in the further developments and to make some corrective action plans, it was a big struggle to get all of those data collected in a format where they can be used. So this is actually giving us very much better condition to work on to maintain our very high quality.
Yeah, exactly. Because I think what you also said, Jacob, is that you have, of course, as SIKA, compared to other brands, that sort of more fashion-driven brands, that there is a higher quality standard that you need to fulfill, right?
Yeah. I'm not so familiar with the fashion industry anymore. I've been working here with almost 30 years with footwear. I have a history for textile industry, but it's 30 years ago. But we're having a very high standard. We are producing only CE certified products. It's bringing us to where we should deliver a high quality, a high durability, and giving a high standard on the product. So we have a lot of parameters what we are measuring on, and where we use the data to keep the highest quality and even bring it in a better level if possible.
Yeah. But I guess just that brings me to a question, Jacob, because I think when I think about what I just mentioned in terms of the all legislations and everything coming our way, I think there is also, of course, fashion brands that need to think a bit differently than they have before in terms of how are we developing in, quality wise. Are you seeing that, Jacob, as well, that they're sort of shifting a bit in a general sense in the textile industry towards a higher quality? Are they doing it in a different way now, or are they only just started? Are you seeing something different now?
I think quality is very close related to cost and brand overall. And I would say when we're talking about the compliance journey and regulation journey that we are seeing now, of course, this is also something that companies want to associate with, and of course, it's licensed to operate, so they need to be compliant. I would say where we often come into play is that we are very. I think when we talk legislation, it's very a top-down exercise for many companies. We like to flip it around and actually do a bottom-up exercise. So where we often come into play is that we live in the factories. We are good at collecting information. So in order to really succeed with this exercise, whether it's supplier compliance related legislation or it's product related legislation, it's, they all have one thing in common. We need to collect information, we need to validate information, and then we need to take action on it. And then, of course, there's a whole, you can say, path of reporting on various different metrics, et cetera, whether that is internally or external stakeholders. I'll leave that to the companies. But where I would say where we want to sit or where we come into play is very much helping companies flipping it around and doing that bottom-up exercise. So really collecting the information, validating the information, for each and every picture that is taken in Qarma, we take 500 million pictures every year in the factories. That's quite a lot. There is actually a GPS coordinate linked to that specific picture. So that means that if you want to map out your supply chain, we can do it on production level, because for each and every order that has an inspection connected to it, there will also be a map of that specific inspection. That is coming bottom up when you start talking about supply chains and that. So from our perspective, or where we try to support companies, is more doing that bottom up exercise. And I think it's relevant for each and every company. And of course, if we can do this as part of the quality exercise or any other exercise, and it's data that can be benefited within compliance or other tracks, I'm yeah, I'm just super happy with that.
But
I
it
would
also
say if you
makes
asked
sense.
me 5 years ago, I wouldn't know,
No.
you know, I wouldn't know I would not be able to write all the use cases and value proposition of Qarma. It's really adding on as the supply chain is evolving and, you know, new focus areas, etc., is coming in. So.
But it also sort of makes sense in a way that when we are not fully aware of the legislations yet, and some of them are still to come, that the bottom up approach is probably the right way to go, because we sort of feel like we have to prepare for everything in a sense, and you know, we will zoom in at some point, but right now everybody has the feeling of it being sort of, let's try and collect everything, and then we can zoom in on the different legislations when they come our way, right?
Yeah,
It's very much that approach.
And I was saying, yeah, one learnings I've taken with me, and Morten, you can probably confirm this, is, you know, if you want to drive good quality, you need to be able to trust the data.
Yeah.
Not just you as a brand or retailer or sourcing company, but also your suppliers.
Yeah.
If you're capturing something and, you know, you go to the supplier and they can't recognize that,
yeah,
it's not going to drive any improvements.
No.
And if you look at from a compliance perspective, if we are not capturing the right data, or if we are not validating that sufficiently so the suppliers can trust it, they will never learn this exercise. They will just do it as a pleaser exercise. So the key thing, and I think that's a learning that where, you know, if we can get this right with quality, I'm pretty sure that we can get it right on some of the other things going forward.
Yeah.
Because can we trust the data from a brand perspective and from a supplier's perspective, we're in a much better place.
Yeah. Can you recognize that one, Morten?
Yeah, I can really recognize that. Of course, between us as purchasing some products, and we have some suppliers and producers around, it's very much in the first stage to get aligned on those figures. What we are measuring on, are we aligned on that? Are we agreeing on the specification? And then we have something to measure against, and then we have the base where we can have the dialogue and develop on futures and say we have some out of specs here, so why are we not in the specs, and what can we do to get back on what we have agreed on originally? And when you make developments, you have all the best intention to be in a certain level, and you make your prototyping and whatever. And when you go in production, actually, there can be not surprises, but there can be some issues you have to navigate and adjust a bit in. And this is where Qarma is really giving us a perfect overview about gathering all of those data to navigate in and to make some corrective actions, adjustments a little bit on our, first of all, our checklist, and further on also on our product data.
Yeah, that's really.
And I think one thing we've also discussed a lot is really the, you know, when you're operating in a local supply chain in a way, you know, the language is not always the best way to communicate things, and especially not when we talk quality. So, you know, driving that visibility through pictures is a key thing, because you can always align on a picture, like, is it a small, major, minor defect? Is that thread, is that sitting inside the pocket, or is it sitting outside the pocket? That's what makes a big difference here. So being able to communicate through pictures and having that global language is definitely a benefit for the companies we work with.
Yeah, this is indeed a very good point about the Qarma. We are cooperating with some Far East companies, some of those QC workers who know exactly how to control our products. They cannot communicate in a what called common language like English. They can just type in the comment as an example in Chinese. There is a translation in the Qarma system, so I can actually understand what they're writing in Chinese, because I know the pictures showing what it is, and then we can have actually a fine dialogue about that with the Qarma tools.
Has it, Morten, been? I mean, because of course your suppliers and the QCs of course work in Qarma, and then the developers or in the factories they work with Delogue. Have you found any difficulties with them, or are they you know, ready to take on these tech solutions for you? Does it help them in any way?
I think it's a human behavior that when we need to try something new, we are oh no,
Yeah.
we are used to communicate in emails. Why should we suddenly start to communicate in Delogue? It took us some time to learn the different partners around that. Now we don't write email anymore. We don't use WhatsApp, WeChat, whatever kind of communication platform. We go into Delogue. And again, when we come to Qarma and say, now we use the Qarma platform for make our quality inspections, do we also have to do that? No, you don't also have to do that. You only need to do that. And then you can stop, make your written hand note, and whatever you do, take pictures, go back and make a lot of reporting job and put in the pictures in the right place in the reporting. So yes, it have given some challenges in the beginning. They should see that was actually give them some kind of efficiency instead of bringing them down in efficiency. So yeah.
Yeah, but they've changed now. So they've sort of well, they're glad about it now.
They are. It's taking time to learn that you're using some new platforms, some new tech platforms, some new apps and whatever you're doing. But they have seen now this is actually true what we was promising from the beginning. It'll be a better solution.
Yeah, good, nice. And can you give some examples, because you have both Delogue and Qarma, of course. Can you give some examples of how that sort of works, both internally for you, of course, but also when we go out to the suppliers? How does those two work in your daily life?
Yeah, for our daily life, we have set up a 5-level control system in the Qarma. Of course, related on the data we get from Delogue, from our WMS system, our ERP system. So we're starting very early in the production stage on the line of when we are producing the footwear. We have pointed out together with some of the suppliers when we have some what called riskful thing we have to overview. We have agreed on together with their QC managers and their team what to monitor on. And together with the Qarma, we have set up a very customized way of checking on different parameters. Some productions we overview 3 times per day because we know there is a critical issue when we are producing high performance safety footwear. We need to be on top of that. Like Jacob said, that we are sitting quite far away from the production. So Qarma is our eyes over the shoulder for those who are standing on the lines to make sure they're observing everything. Next, when they go into the QC room to control the ready-made products, we have a very, again, customized checklist according to suppliers, because even we have amongst different suppliers, there's a little bit of a variation how they do the QC job. Even if we try to standardize it, they have a little bit their own the way to do it. And next, when we are shipping the goods, we also make actually a shipment control, make sure they're loading it correct, like we want to have it in the containers. Is the container, what do you call it, free from water and whatever kind? Yeah. Coming in our warehouse, we make next control again. And finally, we have our internal QC department here in our headquarters in Herning in Denmark. We're taking out some versus random control and make actually control on exactly the same pairs what we have been reported in the inspection in the factories. So again, we can get the alignment because different eyes see different things. So we can have the dialogue about that. And like Jacob said, pictures don't lie. So if we see something, it's very easy to point it out, and then we can have the dialogue around this kind of pictures and documentations and misses, whatever.
Cool. So if I just zoom in on, so you have Delogue, and then of course your ERP system, etc., in terms of the development phase, and then once you're sort of ready, and you've said go to a product, then that goes to Qarma for them to take over in terms of quality, right? Because your sample process and everything that still runs in Delogue. Yeah,
all our sampling is and all the processes, development processes going in the our R&D department are starting in the very early stage with the mood boards and very, very early stage. And then when we're starting to go further with the products, we are enriching the products by itself with the data. And of course, data are adjusted until now we're reaching a point where now we have settled it. the PP sample, we are ready for production. Then we are logging the data from the R&D department. Then they have delivered what they should deliver. Then we take over in my responsibility area with the quality, and then we enrich it even with more data. We're also putting a lot of data in our WMS system. ERP system are delivering the order data directly into Qarma. So we actually have a lot of different kind of data floating into the Qarma platform from Delogue, from VMS, from ERP. So handle data is done invisible. Nobody sees it, but it's going automatically.
That's good. And Jacob, because I think what you're describing, Morten, is of course a very, very I don't know what to call it, process-oriented, professional way of doing it. You know, it feels like that's definitely the way to go. But Jacob, I think coming myself from the fashion industry, that's not always how it is.
Nope.
Let's be honest.
Yeah.
So in a sense, you know, when we meet, when you then meet somebody who isn't as professional and process oriented as Morten, how do you go about that? You know, there must be somebody that comes to you and say, we need quality, can you help us? And
yes.
Then,
And I would say from our perspective, we have customers that run 5 inspections every month, and we have customers that run plus 10,000 inspections every month.
Yeah.
So we work with small brands, medium size, and you know we work with like really large brands as well. So for us, it's more the way we set it up. So we, as Morten said, we can pull in data from multiple different sources. Typically, all the product-related data, such with different properties, measurements, colors, sizes, etc., will come from a PLM like Delogue, where we take it in, we take the measurement, and then we embed it all the way into that specific checklist. So if we build out a checklist, we might have a number of different checkpoints. That could be check the packaging, is the right barcode on, does it have the shipping mark on, is the assortment in the boxes correct? Then when we start looking at the product, is it you know, the right color, the right size, all these different things that can go wrong in production. And then we simply just build out the checklist that fits that brand at that one. And I would say the way we typically start is that all brands are different. They have different quality requirements. They might look alike each other, but once we get into the real stuff in the factory and with the brands, we'll see that they're all different. So we typically do like a maturity assessment, really basic. Any company, any size can do this. What's your volume?
Yeah.
Because that plays a big role in, you know, what's the impact of the quality. If it goes wrong, is it just a few pieces or is it a lot? How strong is your brand? Because you know you want to protect your brand. You're building up a brand. Some are more like private labels, where brand is not necessarily the key essence of this. And then the other part is what's the complexity of the product. So of course with Morten and the space they operate in, there is definitely a complexity. And when we talk shoes, it's complicated. Like there are many levels and often like a quite complex supply chain behind a piece of shoes. So that could be one. We also have customers working in electronics, or you know, you could have outerwear, activewear, where you know it's not seams, it's glued, or there could be many different types of variations. So of course, product complexity is one key thing. And then the supplier relation. Have you worked with the supplier for many years? Are you introducing new product types, categories, etc.? It's also key. So typically where we start out is really making, and it's not a fancy assessment at all. It's simply just asking a few questions, aligning on, you know, your level of quality. And then based on that, we will know where to put the effort. How should that be? Can you trust the supplier in conducting their own inspections, like supplier self-QC, or do you need to have a third party go in and monitor it? Or do you actually have a few collections where you decide to go and travel to Turkey or Asia for checking this, etc.? So for us, it's really understanding the customer. And then once we do that, we can start building the logic from the data. And then, as Morten said, as more we can automate, like it could sound like science, But, you know, once we start setting the connection points here between the data and the tolerances of the different brands, then we can actually automate a lot of this. And then it's just an app where you take pictures.
Yeah. Do you do actually that because you said it with a lot of different suppliers, and of course a lot of sub-suppliers, etc. in producing a shoe. There's a lot of components compared to if you have a jersey t-shirt, so to speak. So do you do that quality also on those levels before it becomes a final product, or are you mainly focused on the final product and the QC there?
We are so far only focusing on the final product.
Yeah.
The responsibility of the right components, of course, when we are developing, we are specifying, and sometimes we even appointing this is exactly the product we want to have. But the responsibility of the components and raw materials is out of we don't handle that.
No.
Then we can also be dragged very much into issues where we should have this discussion with suppliers very much far away. So we are taking over when they start to produce it, and then we have, like I said before, we have the specification how we want to have it produced, and of course agreed and aligned with the producer itself what kind of parameter they're using. For example, on a glue drying tunnel, what is the temperature we need to have the glue dry correctly before we attach the sole to the upper, different kind of things like that. But everything, like Jacob said, get aligned with the producers. What is their capabilities? What can they do? Are we in that matter aligned that they can produce the quality for us? And then we can start to measure on how they do it in daily lives when production.
Perfect. Great. And I always end up these type of webinars to sort of dive into the future. Not that anybody can, but I want to ask you the question anyhow. To sort of how are you preparing for the future? So if you could start off by Morten, as a SIKA, how are they then sort of preparing for the future? What do you see that you need to be prepared for? Other than you already are, of course, but do you see anything in the future that you need to prepare for?
Yeah, future is always a difficult point to predict what is the new future. I have often get pointed out that I want to collect a lot of data, collecting a lot of data, and somebody says, is it really necessary? Maybe not at the point when we're collecting data, but certainly at a point when you need to report something, sustainability-wise, production-related, social audit, or whatever like that. So gathering data, even if it seems to be unnecessary at the point when you are collecting it, suddenly you need it, and then you cannot travel backwards in time and start to collect the data. So collecting unnecessary data, somebody will say.
Perhaps, you don't know. Good preparations, I think. And what about you, Jacob? What do you see for both Qarma, but maybe also for your customers? What do you see the future brings?
I see a lot of complexity in the world, both in supply chains, but also in regulations, in products. You know, now we didn't touch much on the digital product passport, but there's a lot of new initiatives coming out. There's a lot of different ways of reporting data, different frameworks, platforms, etc. I think from a Qarma perspective, we try to live a simple life in a way, and we try to encourage our customers to do the same. And so how can we enable them to simplify a lot of these pretty complex processes that we see? I think that's really what we try to do. But also, how can we use technology to master this? Morten mentioned data. Yes, you know, that's a key thing. Of course, we collect so many data points, whether it's a timestamp on the pictures, whether it's GPS coordinates, any different remarks, findings. You know, we in a picture, there's not just a product. There's a lot of context around that picture that can tell a story about that factory, the maturity of the supply chain, etc. So of course, our task is also to really understand what are the core use cases of this very complex world, and how can we help companies extract that data and use it in a proper way. For us, we like to talk about the use cases and really trying to find out where can we add value, and then of course whether it's going to be generated through various different technologies as AI and other stuff. That's secondary. Most important thing is that we can really simplify this and be able to extract it so it drives value for our customers. I think that's kind of what we try to do. It's not easy, but challenge taken. So
good, perfect. Thank you so much, both of you, for joining. I will just share my screen again. And just to round up again, thank you so much, both of you, for joining me today. It's been a pleasure to hear about both your cases and, of course, the common user case that we have together. I just want to do a brief introduction to the next webinar we have. We host once a month. We have Delogue Uncovered, where Pernille, our product strategist, and myself sit, and we are basically just ready for your questions. You're also able to ask the questions prior to the webinar, so that we'll bring that question up if you've managed to do that, or you could just show up on the day and ask the questions in the Q&A if you feel like it. And of course, I am not going to shut this webinar off by not mentioning our live event that we have on the 15th of May. Luckily, Qarma will also join us. If you want to meet them in person, be for this event. This is we've decided to call it Tech Threads because tech threads and threads, of course, have a variety of meanings, connecting, collaborating, and creating better. It's, of course, related to textiles, but also the threads between our different platforms. We have a great main stage. We have a lot of different solution partners coming, and both, of course, showcasing the user cases they have, etc. So it's going to be a great day, and you can read more about it. We'll share you the link as well when we send out the email, so that you can sign up or just in general see the agenda and everything for the day. So that was basically it for now. Again, thank you so much, both of you, for joining me today. It's been a real pleasure. I will do this. It's been a real pleasure. There is no questions, so I feel like we have answered all questions. If there were anyone attending that had any questions, we probably answered them. So thank you so much, everybody, and I wish everyone a really good day. Thank you so much.